Looks like Milton Williams, the defensive tackle from Philly, is the big name out there. Some reports linking him to Carolina. Nothing finalized yet.
Good
Atlanta's
player.
in the mix. They just dumped Grady Jarrett.
Yeah, Milton's a good player.
He looks great in Philadelphia.
That's right, because he's got Jalen Carter next to him. So he's a prime example. Milton Williams, how he's letting him go. Okay, he looks really good in Philly because everybody has to double Jalen Carter.
And their edge rushers are great. Sweat and Nolan Smith.
He's a B player. He will get an A contract. And so somebody, and I like him. He's a good player. But let's put this in, contextualize it here. Jalen Carter's Aaron Donald. You have to double team him. Okay. Well, and then you got edge rushers. Okay, so Milton always gets single blocking.
He had a great Super Bowl. He was phenomenal.
He was great, and we've seen that before. Remember Larry Brown of the Cowboys 30 years ago had a great Super Bowl? Somebody overpaid. So I liked this player. But Philly had him on a really good contract.
Yeah.
Now somebody's going to overpay.
By the way, how do you feel about my Jets kind of rebuilding Aaron Rodgers?
No, we're not talking about the Jets. Okay, the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they bring up a good point, and unfortunately this was like a limited conversation by them. This was more of them just buying time in between segments right before, leading into a commercial. But this is one of the problems that the Eagles have, that when you put together such a great team with great coaching, it's trying to figure out which players are playing better because of the team itself, right? Because of the coaching, because of the situation as a whole. And what players now can we bring in that will be able to fill that gap when we're saying goodbye to some of these other players? And it's a tough thing to figure out. It's a tough thing. I know everyone always likes to jump. And we often do this a lot with like wide receivers and quarterbacks, but definitely wide receivers, where we talk about this wide receiver 1 and 2, and we're like, oh, well, so-and-so is only good because of, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown. And I'm just using random wide receivers as an example. So don't get caught up on any of those number 2 wide receivers or whatever. But, so it's that's like such a constant thing that we hear, and to a smaller degree about like running backs and typically like the O-line. And it's a harder thing, especially when you're talking about defense as well. I think it's harder for the average person to kind of really be able to evaluate, especially just sitting at home, because there is so much that's going on in the trenches, especially that it's just a little bit more difficult to really, really kind of successfully evaluate. So I'm so fascinated to see what the Eagles continue to do with all these moves. My dad was asking me, he's like, oh, what do you think about this and that? And I'm like, the Eagles are in an interesting situation, because when we look at some of these other teams, there's like very concrete moves that are either being made or need to be made. Like the Rams going out and getting Devontae, or the Commanders trying to boost up their O-line. Like there's like kind of like clear things that these teams want to do. Whereas the Eagles are kind of in this, we kind of have to figure this out. First off, we have to figure out, who's going to be leaving, who are we willing to let go, and figuring out why we're willing to let said player go, and can we easily replace them? And so the evaluation is so much more nuanced. And so the Eagles are in a significantly harder position. And again, I believe that the Eagles will be able to find their way through it, of course. But the thing is that it takes time to kind of see the path forward for them. Again, it's very obvious what the Commanders are looking to do, what the Rams are looking to do, what the Chiefs need to do. Like it's there's gaps that need to be filled. The Eagles, there were no gaps last year. Nothing needs to be filled. If they could have run back the team exactly as is and everybody was on board, like, you wouldn't say, yeah, well, we really need to, do blank. Like, you wouldn't say that. Everything else would be just an extra luxury. Like, sure, we can get a better wide receiver, a better this, a better that. Like, you always want more, I suppose, but, like, there would be nothing that you really need to be like, ooh, this was a problem that we need to fix. Like, there really was no problem, so now it's just kind of figuring out, how do you kind of not reinvent, not rebuild, but in a lot of ways, the Eagles have to reimagine what this team is in terms of like how to move forward, what pieces they bring in, what pieces they let go. And I just think that them of all teams in March in their free agency moves, it's so hard to really feel too confident or too what's the word I'm looking for? Jumping to a strong conclusion because the path is so much longer for the Eagles. And to me, the draft, especially for the Eagles, is always as well going to be so prominent in what they try to continue to do. Because, yeah, there was a couple big splash moves that they could have made technically, right? Like getting Myles Garrett, which obviously didn't happen. And, but like, outside of that, it was just like, what were some of the big plays that the Eagles could have moved, that could have really made people, that would have grabbed the headlines. Like they just don't really exist. It's one thing if like a Devontae didn't exist and they went out now and got like a DK Metcalf or something, right? Or if their O-line wasn't so great and they went out and got someone else, like then you would say, okay, they're continuing to build. But here they're just kind of trying to replace and fortify. So again, the moves to me are so much more unclear because we also just don't really. There were so many people that were saying that Bond was going to be moved on from. Obviously not, right? So it's just not clear right now, which just makes it so much murkier from the outside looking in because we just don't have the conversations that are being had there. But clearly, I think there's going to be a reliance on the draft as well, and so we're just too far out from that. But I think it's such a. I think that the Eagles are being smart right now. They're not backing themselves in a corner. They're allowing all of these other teams to make moves, as well as it also now clarifies what some of these other teams are looking to do, and then it allows them to know, okay, these are some of the decisions that we need to make moving forward. Because I do think it's not hard to imagine that the Commanders are going to be better, that the Rams are going to be better. I'm trying to think of any other random team that I think could, take another step forward. But let's just look at the Rams and the Commanders, two teams that the Eagles obviously played en route to their Super Bowl. So it's important to look and see what those teams are doing. And I think it's important to be like, okay, if we played this team again exactly as is, do we beat them? Yes or no? Or how does that game change? Does the game get closer? Does it get harder to win? Does it become more of a coin flip, more of a who's got the ball, last type situation? And, evaluate that, as well as now be like, okay, well, we're not the same team, though. We are saying goodbye to, X, Y, and Z. How do we move from there? How do we move forward from here? So the Eagles, unfortunately, from just like a free agency headline standpoint, as unpopular and unsexy as it is, it really is just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Just got to continue to wait and see how this unfolds. Again, though, it's the luxury of having someone like the Harry Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, where they're going to do what needs to be done. They're going to be smart, aggressive in their own right, and not just rest on their laurels of just like, hey, we won the Super Bowl, that's good enough, or hey, we won the Super Bowl, we're just gonna we don't need to do much, we're just gonna win because we're so great, as long as we got Jalen Hurts and Sirianni, we're gonna win. They're not doing that nonsense either. So I think Eagles fans have to be more patient with the vision, and I also think it's fair to say that with the Eagles as well. And this is what I said, and again, this is definitely less popular because I know everybody wants to just run it back and, go back to back and potentially three-peat and all of this. I put the Eagles, based on how they're run, based on how, the meat of their contracts are, it's like, if you told me that this, and again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just saying if you told me that this coming season was, I don't want to say a down year, but just not as dominant as they were this year, as this past year, but then they use that foundation as another stepping point to take the next step back. Essentially exactly what they did in 22. When you really think about it, it was 22. They were amazing, dominant. 23, step back. 24, step forward, dominant win. If you told me that it was a similar thing as well, as whereas that now that 25, it's like, you know, they're obviously a good team. They can win. They're, you know, you don't want to necessarily face them, but they're not as, you know, as ferocious as they were in the year past. But then now that they build off of that next year to take it to that next level, to now whoever they drafted is now in their second year, where now they have some more open space, and now they go out and get, you know, insert random player there. Like, that would not surprise me by one stretch of the imagination. So that's why I'm really fascinated to see what the Eagles do to try to continue this dominance, you know, and who they rely on as well. So they're a wait and see team more than any other team right now from my viewpoint. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Philadelphia Eagles offseason moves so far? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way. Let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.